Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about my DMT breakthrough, which happened about 24 hours ago, just a bit less. Just to also confirm that I was also on 350 milligrams of mdma, taken in 3 separate doses, and 3 tabs of LSD, which weren't too strong. I would say there's probably only about 250 mics between them. I was hoping for around 300, but they didn't feel too strong, so let's say 250 mics, which is still a decent enough dose. It's not overwhelming. So, I'm going to skip that part of the trip anyway, and I'm going to skip straight to DMT. I mean, I was already tripping balls on the MDMA and the acid, and then about 6 hours into the trip, or 7, is when I decided to take the DMT. So, for the first time I actually managed to get hold of a glass pipe, which I now use specifically for DMT. I use the sandwich method, so I put a small piece, sort of like a half a centimetre height of weed in this pipe. And then after that, on top of that, I sprinkled 60 milligrams of crystal white clear DMT. And then I put a bit of weed on top of that, so obviously you burn the top part of the weed, and DMT basically vaporizes through the heat transfer, and it's the most efficient way to do it, and unless you have an actual pipe. I accidentally bought the wrong one, but you know, this was a tremendously extreme transformation, and I'm still kind of a bit shaken up and shocked now from it, because I have broken through, I think, twice, but this was probably the strongest breakthrough I've ever had. It's weird because the other breakthrough I actually rate being slightly more visual, even though this one was full of visuals anyway. But this one was more of in a headspace thinking as well. And but anyway, I'm going to get on with it. So I took a good 8 hits of this DMT, maybe 8 or 9 hits. And I was hitting that pipe for a long time. I was, breathing in the smoke and letting it vaporize for a long time. And it did take about 8. Well, I could have probably stopped after about 2 or 3, but I carried on and did about 8 or 9 massive hits. And after the third, that's when it started to get really heavy. And I sort of just kept going as quickly as I could, while making sure I don't exhale the smoke straight away, because you need to keep it inside you for at the very least 10 seconds. And basically straight away, when it started to all hit me, I'm still on the LSD, which is very useful for DMT. It really slows the visuals and the DMT trip down, which means you can take more information, and maybe if it wasn't for me being on LSD yesterday, I might not have been able to process and remember so much about this trip, because I'm sure there's a lot I forgot. But out of all the DMT trips, I have remembered this one the most. So anyway, let's get on with it. So firstly, I was in my friend's room, and I was transcended somewhere else within about two minutes. And I have seen things similar to this, but I saw my genetic code in front of me. And it wasn't just in front of me, I was my genetic code. I was basically what is underneath our skin, what makes us humans. I saw my DNA through my hand. My hand changed into a variety of different types of hands. It was still a hand, but it changed into sort of like different textures and different colours. And then after that, I moved my head a little bit, and I was looking at a light, and the light was actually in my friend's room, but it changed into something completely different, and then it blurred away, and suddenly I saw these, I saw a huge ball of light, and these hooded figures were walking towards me with advanced triangular shaped eyes. And not long after that, probably about 10 seconds after that, I heard them, and this is the first time I've ever heard visuals on DMT, which just proves to me that this was 100% a breakthrough. They were telling me basically, and the closest sort of sounding voice I can place on it. It sounded like gestures or jokers. It didn't sound like the machine elves that people talk about, or some people say they see a woman guiding them, but it sounded to me like jokers, and they basically said it's going to be all right. You just need to be yourself, and the whole trip was ridiculously introspective. And as I said, I did it nearly 24 hours ago, and it's all I've been thinking about today. Those were the strong visual parts of it, and obviously, even between those, there were cascading shapes everywhere. I didn't even realise I was in my friend's room at a few points. I'm almost crying about it now because the experience has just been so eye-opening for me. And I'm going to get onto the headspace part now, because I've never experienced headspace quite like this for DMT before. And see, I'm actually getting emotional. It is just crazy. So yeah, I mean, as I said, I saw my DNA, and I felt like I felt like I was, I felt like I was basically the human binary or DNA, that sort of class of thing. And I believe that I travelled through my ancestors' knowledge and came out the other side. I basically felt like I had the knowledge of who is behind all of this evil in the world and all of the propaganda, and I was under the impression that the media and TV and television and stuff like that, and companies trying to sell us these clothes, obviously everyone knows it's a distraction, but I was trying to get behind who are these false prophets, and the dark energies amongst us. Maybe we can't see them, or maybe they're people high up in the skies that use this dark energy against the average human being to make them consume and become a slave to this physical realm. And I thought that I was I thought that I was in knowledge of those answers, and it felt like my brain was being given more information than it could take. At one point, I also looked at my friend. His room was very distorted this whole time I was tripping during the DMT trip, and it did last a little bit longer than it normally does, which just shows how much I took. I did do 60 milligrams at once. I've never taken that much before at once. Sorry, I have one time, but I didn't really smoke it properly. And I looked at him, and I saw through his head, and I could see his brain, and at one point different segments of his brain were getting detached, and it was almost as if it was a computer, and there were files being dragged from his temporal lobe, his hippocampus at the back, and it had all of his memories and emotions and stuff in them. And after that, there was no emotion. After that, there was no emotion. I was just being given sacred information of deep cover up and secrecy. And I also came under the idea, while I was hallucinating on this DMT and also with the headspace hallucinations, that there is no reason to be afraid of death, because humans are merely atoms, and vibration and energy, and it gave me the idea that when we do die, we're just going to go back to what we were before we were here, but we still existed. We might not be physical because these are atoms, and we may transcend even to something even greater, or we will at least go somewhere, which made me think, well, if the world did end, none of us need to worry, because we might even become something greater than this physical world, which is full of issues and lies and evil people, which is produced by these false prophets. And I'm not sure if they're physical false prophets or it's tainted energy, which has been, these problems have come up in the past, and that's what's made the world like it is today. And it was really strange as well, because it made me think quite violently at one point. I when I was zoned out and I sort of got back, so this is sort of the afterglow effect of it, but literally straight after I came back, I was looking at an innocent cartoon on my friend's TV when I sort of started to get more aware of where I was. And we were watching Transformers, and I know it's a very innocent program, for kids and stuff, but we put it on because it's quite trippy. But after I smoked the DMT, I couldn't even watch it. I was so angry that this man-made piece of machinery was in front of me, and it's producing false images for a screen, which, 100 years ago or so ago when the TV first came out, that's when people started to, become more docile. And we've always been controlled in some way, but it made me so angry because whenever I looked at the TV, all I saw was propaganda and lies and falsehood, and I just couldn't deal with it. So after that, I went to sleep, I think. But that was the strongest DMT trip I've ever had. As I said, I saw pretty much as soon as I took that third or fourth hit. I kept going afterwards, but I saw my own DNA. I was my DNA. I travelled through my ancestors' belief systems and memories, and it just made me also think that this whole physical world could just be a concept of vibration. It could be a concept of it could be a concept within one concept within another concept inside an atom, and that could be in another atom somewhere else, and this could all just be in somebody's head. It's not for the faint-hearted, and I'm honestly shocked because, as I said, I think I've had one breakthrough before, possibly another one, but this was the strongest breakthrough I've ever had. I've experienced now what people do say is a breakthrough. I heard entities. It wasn't for long, but I heard entities explain to me that I'm going to be all right. I saw them walking towards me, these hooded figures with, as I said, advanced futuristic eyes, and they just looked like they were much more advanced and clever than human beings. And it's just made me think that the only way to overcome... See, this is where it gets good. This is where it's taught me something. The only way to overcome these false prophets and these negative realms of energy which have caused war, the media, stuff like that just all the indoctrination. The only way to conquer it is to be positive. And that's what I came across. How can you fight something that's stronger than you and that's invisible, that's negative, that is actually subconsciously making an effect on pretty much everyone's life in the world, that is brainwashed by mass media and corporations? The only way you can fight that is to be positive. You don't have superpowers, you can't access this DMT realm all the time, so maybe just at least try and be positive in this physical realm, because at the end of the day, you're most likely, from what I have experienced, going to die and either transcend somewhere greater, or you will at least go somewhere else. And there is more than this physical world. I travelled through hyperspace last night, and I'm certain that I spoke to my ancestors or some sort of being with a higher knowledge. But then again, this could all be an illusion. This could all be an illusion, and one other thing I was thinking of, which isn't a nice thought. I was tripping at one point, and for a minute I saw the world, and it's like one of those classic videos where you see the globe, and you're just about in space, and it's like turning in different angles and stuff. I saw the world, and I'm not sure if I heard a voice, or it was my own consciousness saying it, or my opinion, through this body from what I was seeing, but I tried to convince myself. I either tried to convince myself, or I heard it from a higher entity with higher knowledge, that this whole universe could have been created just for me, just for this body, and everyone else around it is working not against you, but they're trying to keep you in it. And it is not a nice thought, and I don't think that would be true, but it's still a thought, and it came across in my head. So as I said, that this is a general explanation, and there's a lot more that I haven't really said, but this is a general explanation of what my DMT trip was like yesterday. I ventured through human DNA. I saw those figures. I was told it was going to be okay, and now I have I religiously, like, I'm not religious, but, you know, I obsessively now have a different view on this world. I'm just trying to be a positive person. I'm trying to give more love to people that I'm close to, instead of fighting back at them, because it's just a waste of energy, and you're obeying the false prophets if you become negative, and if you don't be the best person you can be. And this DMT trip was just crazy, and I don't feel like I need to do it for a while. It's all I was talking about. I was almost in tears at my friend's house yesterday. But yeah, this is probably the strongest experience of my life. You know, we're reaching into our integral, you know, biological, neurological database, basically. And I seriously think science needs to look into this for research, or just an idea of what else could be giving us these ideas. Maybe it could tell us eventually how the universe was created, but we're not ready for that yet. As I said yesterday, I felt like I had all the answers to why there are false prophets, and why are these evil, demonic people, you know, creating such, creating such separate paths for us and trying to divide us. I'm absolutely gobsmacked, and the acid really does help. That's a bit of advice. If you ever do LSD and want to smoke DMT, that's a really good idea, because that acid really does slow it down. You just take a lot more information in. The MDMA does help as well, because it really does take away the anxiety.